Carpentier, the Mind of Mansion show, coming at you. We've had some time post-combine, let it all digest, all these athleticism measurables coming in. As that's happening, news is breaking about Calvin Ridley, news is breaking about Dalton Schultz and David Njoku and Mike Gesicki. All these tight ends are coveted, and it's weird that they're all getting franchise tag. Why aren't more tight ends going in the first round of the draft if they're so valuable? There's a question. That's a question I have. Why not more in the first round? But we should just bring you in, Cody. Let's skip the pre-show. We had a little pre-show, and the pre-show was just mostly just us getting a technical, feel for what we're doing here, what we're going to talk about, and also just some behind-the-scenes underworld stuff. So let's just go. We're just going to go live. We don't need a warm-up. This guy doesn't need a warm. He doesn't need to stretch.
Let's go. Already worked out this morning. Second can of Monster. I don't need no warm-up.
You've worked out. You've had a second can of Monster. I have 2 cups of water. That's what I have.
I got a water over here too. So
I've gone to 2 cups of water. I used to just try to get through it, but I was constantly it's like a force of habit. I was drinking from an empty cup, constantly looking, peering in, going, man, is there any water left? Halfway through the show, then I was like, why don't you just fill up 2 glasses of water? How hard is that? 2 cups. Why not? 2 cups, 1 Podfather.
Yeah. It's like that was pretty good. I was gonna say you could just do what I got with this 5-gallon jug though, man. It's not
I've
quite
got a
arm's
big
length
Yeti.
away, but
I've got a big Yeti thing over there.
Perfect.
I could go refill, but I'm going to stand up and go refill. No, I'm here in this chair. We're streaming for the people. They don't want to see me getting up and see my, rear end moving out of the screen and come back. It's distracting. We do a tight show here, dude. We're going live. We're going live right now.
We're dialed. Let's go.
Welcome to the Roto Underworld radio program, the Atlas of the Underworld. This guy has this whole thing on his shoulders. When you go to Breece Hall, when you go to Kayvon Thibodeaux, it was Cody Carpentier that made that player page happen. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I already said his name. Wait. I said his name. Wait. What happened? Oh, no. This is Cody Carpentier! Talk to me. What happened to your audio?
Oh, you got it. I thought you torched it for a second there. You course corrected, and now we're back. I love the intro as always.
Oh, it was good. I was bummed that I said your name before. Usually I allude to it, this guy, he, whatever. And then I said, listen, not all my intros are perfect, but that one felt good. That one felt very good. And I felt good for one particular individual at the Combine just because, they saved the biggest guys for last. And I was like, what are you doing, man? What are you doing to these guys? You're moving them to the weekend. And already they have to go out there and run some embarrassing number compared to the other positions. It's always somewhere in the 5s with these offensive linemen, these defensive linemen. And you can tell there's shame on their face. This is not my specialty. I'm not here to run super fast in a straight line. And so I just don't like the linemen running, and then there's the broadcasters are mocking them, and they're always like, this guy's a wide load. Look at that wide load move down. It's hey, guys, could you just let them get it over with? Just please. Just let them get it. And then Jordan Davis steps up to the line, and he runs a tight end 40 time at 340 pounds, 4.78. And then he had incredible burst, broke the record for a 300-pounder in the broad jump. When you saw what Jordan Davis did, what were you thinking? And are you thinking that this guy helped his draft stock immensely? Is he now a first-rounder?
Well, he's been a first-rounder, but the raising of the stock thing was awesome.
Okay, let me say it again. Let me say it again. What is he now a top 10 pick?
close to it. I think that is in his realm of possibility. So when you saw him run this number, and it's like, this guy just ran a 4.7. I mean, live, I think it was a 4.84 or something, and then it came down to a 4.78 at 341 pounds. Like that is crazy. That's a ludicrous number. Obviously,
it's ludicrous. It's right out of Spaceballs.
And in my last mock, I had him going 14 to Baltimore. I think his ceiling, I think he can get up to like 8 at the Atlanta Falcons if they really want to go that direction. There's been talk about Grady Jarrett going elsewhere from Atlanta. They fill this guy in right from the stop. But the big thing with Jordan Davis, and it's not about the talent. The talent's there, the speed there, the burst off the line of scrimmage is there. It's more so in season, this guy was 365 pounds, and the stamina wasn't quite there. So they're, the first 10 weeks of the season, they're steamrolling everybody. So this guy can come in, play 2 downs, come out. They're 3 and out everybody. There's not a lot of press going on. Then you come to that Alabama game in the SEC championship, and Alabama runs hurry up. Jordan Davis comes out of the game more and more. Alabama wins. Then they have a couple weeks off before the national championship rematch against Alabama, and they talked about doing more and more conditioning that helped them get into the national championship game against Alabama. And that's when Jordan Davis obviously took over, played great in that game. But that, I think, is the biggest question, and that's something that us from the outside of these NFL organizations are not going to be able to really get the answer to directly, because in those interviews one-on-one with the team, that's where you're going to find out where his mentals are at. Is this guy going to be able to stay 330, 340 and play at the next level? Because if he can play at 330, 340, he's a top 10 pick, hands down, no question. It's if his mentals aren't quite on that level of, hey, I'm mature, hey, I'm a professional, he's going to bounce back to 360, 370, and he's going to be out of shape, and he's just not going to be that. He's not going to have that talent and that output that he would if he was 330, 340, if that makes sense.
It's already a good sign. It's already a good sign that the agent said to him, listen, millions of dollars are at stake. Yeah. You got to get in better shape. You got to drop down to somewhere around 340. Millions of dollars. Let's go. And then the next proposition is, millions of dollars waiting for you in your second contract. Right? So hopefully this is a sign that he's now realized, oh, wow, okay, I'm not in college anymore. There's real money at stake, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to be a full-time player. I'm going to be an every down player. Yeah. I mean, this guy's an every down player. Would just be a complete nightmare up the middle. I mean, the A-gap destroyed. Just a smoking crater of an A-gap.
And a guy that I don't really want to overshadow, who's his teammate from Georgia, is Devontae Wyatt. This guy also 300-plus pounds, 307 pounds. He runs a 4.77. So this guy can't be ignored either. He's a guy that maybe jumps into that first round. I had him 44th overall in the last mock. I think he's a guy that's going to enter that round 1. And I actually did my defensive line grades, and I had him just a notch higher than Jordan Davis as an overall NFL prospect. So Devontae Wyatt, I think, also needs praise. 4.77 at 307 pounds. Like we were talking before, 300-plus pounds is impressive. This guy's also 300-plus, and he runs the same speed. So it's just 14 players from Georgia go back to the national championship was in Indianapolis. 14 people go back to Indianapolis and then run these 4. Like, just a crazy showing. Just crazy.
What about Aiden Hutchinson? He ran a 4.74, which was slower than about 10 other guys. Yeah. Are you impressed? Do you think that he did enough to overtake Kayvon Thibodeaux?
I don't think he did enough to overtake Kayvon Thibodeaux, but some people came in with that mindset already, and some people that I've talked to that think he's the guy are not. It's just one of those weird things where, like, you're either pro Thibodeaux and you're completely in, or you're the one that when somebody it's kind of a confusing thing, because when someone gets to the top, they're always trying to take things off. They're like, what's wrong with him? What's wrong with him? What's wrong with him? But the thing you don't realize is that this guy is so defined in his craft and everything's so smooth and technical with Kayvon Thibodeaux that you start to overanalyze these things. And like with Aiden Hutchinson, yeah, he's nice, but everyone you talk to, they go, a couple people at the combine was like, he's not Nick Bosa. He's not Joey Bosa. He's not that. He has the motor. He has the motor to be a guy, but he doesn't have that Bosa talent. He doesn't have that Watt talent where Thibodeaux does. But Hutchinson, I think, did enough. He did very well on the shuttle and the 3-cone drills. So I think he warrants a top 10 pick, top 5 pick is probably where he's going to go, obviously. But I still prefer Thibodeaux.
You should. He could be TJ Watt. T.J. Watt went at pick 30. How the hell did that happen? He has the pedigree, right? And he had incredible measurables, 76th percentile, 40 time, 90th percentile burst and agility, and then he goes at pick 30. I mean, it was such a steal from the Steelers. So I think that might be his ceiling. That's the ceiling, but that guy went the 30th overall pick, top 5, locked in for Hutchinson, but I prefer Thibodeaux. It's just weird. It's just weird that you would – it seems like NFL teams finally come to Jesus on the best edge rusher of the class, whether it's Jadeveon Clowney. You know, there were doubts about him. Does he have the right work ethic? Does he have the right mentals, right? And then, you know, Myles Garrett was a 101. That was great. Not many questions about him, but I remember at the time there were, you know, toughness concerns and, you know, giving 100% on every play. It's just every time. But though you hear these narratives, eventually, as we get to draft day, they tend to distill out, and then there we go. There's the best player, Kayvon Thibodeaux. He was the best player all during the college football season. He's been the best player throughout the process. He ran a 4.58, right? He's awesome, right? So his speed clearly crushes Hutchinson's. So did nothing to hurt himself, only helped himself at the combine, right?
Yeah, and that's like coming in my draft grades, I literally have Melvin Ingram and Jadeveon Clowney as the two guys of the style comparables. And then you go to the combine and he's asked, you know, who do you model your whole situation after? He's like, I want to model my combine after Jadeveon Clowney. And then his gameplay after Von Miller. He's like, I've learned things from Von Miller to be more technically sound. So then that like doubles down on what you already see is just his thought process while he's rushing is maybe some people like that Watt or that Bosa tenacity that Hutchinson shows. But I think from the Hutchinson side, he's very refined at his couple things that he does. But my problem is at the next level, he doesn't get great extension. And those couple moves, when you get lined up against a Trent Williams or a Tristan Wirfs, those couple moves can get locked up by a great left tackle, right tackle, whereas Thibodeaux has great extension and he can do everything. And I think any of the questions about lack of effort are completely false. And I heard none of those from NFL insiders. So
there we go.
I'm not really worried from the next level.
Thank you. See that when you're talking to people at the combine, that's why you're at the combine. So you could talk to these guys and actually get the real scoop on these players, not just what we're hearing second and third hand from big media, big NFL media.
Yeah.
Amare Barno ran a 4.36 from the edge, which is absolutely incredible. Now, he's lighter. He must be, right? He's 240, but still, to run a sub 4.4 at 240 pounds was special. If he adds 20 pounds at the NFL level, the guy's going to be a monster. He has to be.
I love this Amare Barno one because I was sitting there at the combine and all these prop bets came out. And our friend Dalton Cates calls me and he's like, who's going to be the fastest lineman here? And Barno was the first name that came to my mind because when I watched him, it was this Leonard Floyd, this Arden Key. That's kind of where he plays. And he reminded me of like a little bit of like Isaiah Simmons. And you remember how Isaiah Simmons flew at the combine? I said Barno. And then, you know, we did some research and it was like 4.7 in high school or something. I was like, this dude, he's going to be quick. Comes out, runs a 4.36. But I really like Barno. And I think he's more than what you just see with this 40-yard dash where people are like, you know, what is he? Like last year he had 16 tackles for loss, 6.5 sacks, and then 2021 he kind of took a little dip of a down year. But I have Barno rated a little bit higher than a lot of people do, and I just think he's going to be very nice coming downhill. You remember how underrated Leonard Floyd was for the Rams all season, and I think Barno fits right in that kind of scheme.
What about Devin Lloyd? You have him as the first linebacker on the big board. And the big board index on our Dynasty Deluxe package aggregates 10 plus of the big media mock drafts. And so just going across the board from The Athletic all the way to Sports Illustrated, on average, Devin Lloyd is projected to be the first linebacker drafted, yet he only ran a 4.66, which was slower than 10, 15 guys. So did he
very,
hurt himself?
Very disappointing. Yeah, that was disappointing. I had him going off the board in 16 to the Eagles in my last mock, and I really thought he was going to come in here and run in the low 4.5s. And I especially after you saw how fast everybody else was running, I was like, this really fits. But one of the guys that I actually thought kind of fit his mold was an Anthony Barr, and I'm just now pulling up Anthony Barr. I did not look this up before, but Anthony Barr actually ran a 4.66, which is exactly what Devin Lloyd ran. So I don't think we can write him off. Barr still went 9th overall in the draft.
Okay.
But Devin Lloyd, I think is still the best linebacker in this class overall. 111 tackles last year, 22 tackles for loss. I mean, there's not a lot you can really complain about with Devin Lloyd's play style.
Now, looking at corners, it's between Stingley and Gardner and Stingley. Stingley chose not to run. Gardner ran 4.41, so he delivered. Still, though, not even top 10, right?
Yeah.
10 corners going sub 4.4. Did he do enough to overtake Stingley?
Yeah, I think it really depends on who you talk to, because there's still these videos floating around from Stingley as a freshman, which was his most dominant year in college against Jamar Chase in practice. There's this sick practice footage of him locking Jamar Chase down, and you're like, well, yeah, man, but we haven't seen that in 2 years. And where Gardner hasn't allowed a touchdown in college, period. And he's just got that mentality. He's got that Ramsey mindset where that's really what you want in a cornerback when you're looking for guys like a J.C. Horn last year. His mentals were there. Surtain was more quiet, and that's why I leant towards Horn, was because the mentality's there. And Stingley feels like that guy he's really just fallen because he came in just kind of like Thibodeaux a couple years ago, known as this guy's going to be that dude when he comes out. And he's just slowly went down, and people see him in the late teens going off in mocks, and Gardner now getting top 10 talks. So I do think Gardner's the first guy off. I also think there's a couple other guys that I haven't really dug too deep into. The two guys from Washington, Kyler Gordon and Trent McDuffie, those guys are getting talks about round 1, and McDuffie even up into the 12 area. So I think that's very interesting, but I think Sauce Gardner all but locked up. 4.41 in this class again. We mentioned this before. They got a new timer for the first time in 15 years. Used to be Charlie Casserly. They brought a new guy in this year. So 15 years changed. And then we saw the fluctuation from receivers to running backs. Plus, there was listening to Lance Zierlein talk. He said that they put a new field of turf in at Lucas Oil this last year, and they said it's a faster turf. So whatever that means, I'm not quite sure, but
better grip.
It definitely impacted everybody. Yeah. So, but again, 4.41.
And they had a novice running the timer. Right, this explains why you had these, 3-hour delayed major 40-time corrections after the first wide receiver group ran.
Exactly. So I don't think a 4.41 is anything bad, but it's. I mean, we see this from the corners and safeties every year. That's always the fastest group, and it, again, did not disappoint.
Stingley, he didn't run. Why didn't he run?
Again, it's a lot of things and we'll talk about this later, but it's a lot of thing with your agent. Maybe he knows he's slow. Maybe he's got the right agent, like Kyron Williams. We'll talk about him later, but dude, your agent should not have a job anymore because you shouldn't have ran. You need to know your draft capital.
That's a Kyron Williams take. Come on, dude.
It's toward Derek Stingley. They combine together because Derek Stingley's agent knows his draft capital. He knows he's a top 20 pick. He's a top 20 talent. He's probably a top 10 talent. But he's like, hey, if you're not fast, we're not going to put you out there and just let you destroy. We saw what Kyron Williams did to his draft stock. We're not going to let you go do that to yourself. So just don't run and wait till your pro day if you want to do it. He's still recovering from a Liz Frank injury, so there's just a lot.
Well, that's the reason. That's the reason.
Yeah. But again, if he's going to work out at his pro day is only a month away. So it's still, but it's having the right agent, the right people in your corner. Don't let you do stuff like that.
He has the justification, which is good. That's good for him. He has foot injury. I'm going to wait for my pro day. That's understandable. But every time, and this is whether there's an injury or not, Laquan Treadwell, Corey Davis, whatever it is, right? Laquan Treadwell just opted out because he had a good agent. He didn't want to be embarrassed. Corey Davis was coming back from a foot injury. In all of these cases, we find that if you don't run at the combine, if you skip it, if you're hiding, if you're rehabbing, then you do have to be projected. That influences your draft grade. It has to.
Yep.
It absolutely has to, because you mentioned Jamar Chase. I mean, he's the opposite of Jamar Chase. And Jamar Chase said, I have top 10 draft capital locked in. I'm going to run anyway. I'm going to run anyway. And you see this happening over. And I didn't appreciate this until just recently, that this is a window into how these guys are wired. And some of them just refuse to be managed by their agent, and they're going to run anyway because they just love it and they want to show what they can do. And Jamar Chase, if you run, even though you don't have to, right? So it's not as much an indictment of Stingley, because it could be that he's just not 100% from the Liz Frank injury. But when I look at the cornerbacks and I see, well, there was no reason for Ahman Gardner to run. He didn't need to either. But he said, no, I'm running. Right? So for me, as much as, I would want to have some emotional discount factor that I put on these players because they don't run, I'm not going to do that. Right? I know it's not. There's very little evidence of this. It's more of a correlation that we've seen, a small sample correlation that we've seen over the last 10 years. It's real, but it's, there's not a big enough sample of these guys to say with any kind of definitive certainty that, this is significant what we're seeing here in terms of if you're skipping the combine, this becomes a red flag. I'm not going to go that far. What I'm going to say is you're going to notice on the Dynasty rankings with the lifetime value rating on Drake London, it came down a little bit. It came down a little bit, and that's just because, he didn't run. And why didn't he run? There's a good chance that his agent said, no, it's not a good idea. You're going to miss expectations. Or the guy's constantly injured in college because he's not taking care of his body the right way, and then that leads him to eventually missing the combine. So there's all these little factors, all these little data points that we can factor in and continue to refine models and just make these micro adjustments to get everything just dialed in perfectly. I'm more impressed with Gardner than I am disappointed in Stingley. I think that's the bottom line. Just like last year, I was more impressed with Chase than I was disappointed in Waddle.
Yeah. That makes sense. And to that point with Drake London, April, I think 6th, he's going to hold his own pro day. So like him by himself, he's not even going to attend the USC pro day. He had one of the best random quotes that you didn't really catch was he's like, I'm 15% away from being 100%. So instead of just saying I'm 85%, he's like, I'm 15% away from being 100%. And he's going to run at his pro day, supposedly having I think April 3rd or April 6th. So we will see what happens with that. But again, like I said before in the pre-show, he was not an overtaking figure at the NFL Combine, like maybe like a DK Metcalf. He comes in there and he's like 6'3", 220. He's jacked. You're gonna be like, damn. But this guy he wasn't in that Mike Evans, that Michael Thomas build style. So
he looks.
I'm a little worried.
He's very tall and thin.
He's very thin, and he just was. He had like a jumpsuit on, but again, it wasn't like it wasn't that overtaking body type that you wanted to see, or I thought I was gonna see.
Oh man, it's not great, right?
Yeah.
Where did he weigh in at?
I can't remember. 211 maybe.
That's a very, very slight frame.
Was it 211?
That's an incredibly low BMI. We have him at 219. That must be what he weighed in at?
Yeah, that's right then.
Like 211 is what he weighed in at college. So he did actually put on weight.
Yeah.
So he does. I mean, 6'4", 220 seems close to Mike Evans, but you're telling me no. You're telling me in person, this guy looks slight.
In person, he wasn't Mike Evans. I've seen Mike Evans closer up than and Drake. No, they're not the same body, like the same height, all that BS. But they're not. Evans is more. Easiest term is just he's more jacked than Drake London is.
The best thing about Drake London is that he went over 500 yards as a true freshman with significant target competition, including Amon-Ra St. Brown, who was great last year, and Michael Pittman. So Michael Pittman was there. Amon-Ra St. Brown was there. He still put up over 500 yards at age 18, and he's coming out early at age 20. That is more important to me than how big he is, how fast he is, anything else. That's the reason why we still have him in that Garrett Wilson tier, which has now been joined by Chris Olave, right? So he's in that tier with those guys because of his freshman year production more than anything else. So we're not going to let the BMI wag the dog here, like we did with Calvin Ridley, and we'll talk about him in a little bit. That has since proven to be all the concerns about Calvin Ridley. We're justified, but not for the reasons we gave at the time. You should have had concerns for other reasons. And we have some breaking news here. We have some breaking news sound effect. What is the breaking news? Let me just run the breaking news for us here, and then you give the breaking news, Cody. Hold on. Go ahead.
4 years, $200 million, $153 million guaranteed, and his cap number goes down. Aaron Rodgers back to the Packers.
Of course. There it is. Thank you. That little couple pick ADP discount you had on Devontae Adams in the first round, that's gone. Goodbye to that. No more Devontae Adams discount, just like last year. I mean, deja vu, man. Deja vu all over again. 4 years?
4 years.
4 years is the big surprise.
4 years, $200 million, so he cracks $50 million average per year, which is a wild number. And the big thing that just gets sneaked in here from Rappaport is, and his cap number goes down. So that'd be for this year, obviously. And as people know, in the next 4 hours, the franchise tag window closes. So
he just ensured that Devontae Adams is going to be back with them.
And yeah, I was going to say, and with some notes, when I talked to Brian Gutekunst and asked him about the situation, everything he said was, it's Rodgers, and then everything comes after. So Rodgers is done. You got 4 hours to figure out a long-term deal or franchise tag. Devontae Adams, I think they probably know what they're going to do, but He didn't ankle at anything when we were there. So
no coincidence that Rodgers signs just in time for them to get Devontae Adams in under the wire, but not with a franchise tag. I don't think he wants to be franchise tagged. I think they're going to try to do a deal with him. I think now they have some more wiggle room to do a deal with him. That may have been part of the negotiation that, hey, I'm coming back, but I don't want you to franchise tag my friend. I want him to be around and my go-to receiver for the next 4 years as well. Rodgers has his age 38, 39, 40, 41. So he's going to be in the NFL likely through age 41. This boosts his dynasty value, especially in Superflex and 2QB. If you got you traded for Aaron Rodgers. You got him from me in a Superflex league, 2QB league last year, because I didn't think this guy was going to be hanging around the league much longer. Now that is looking really stupid. Really, really silly. Really, really silly deal. I wanted to get Travis Etienne from you. That was the deal. And I just, whoops. I didn't know he was going to be a quarterback until age 41. They were talking about him going to play other sports or host Jeopardy, whatever he wants to do. Who knows? No. Turns out he wants to be the quarterback for the Green Bay Packers.
So does he jump up back over Matthew Stafford then?
Of course, yes, Cody. Of course, yes, he's moving up, man. He's got to move up. Wow, there's a lot of moving, a lot of shaking. There's a lot going on here, man. There's a lot going on. So let's talk about the rookies on the offensive side of the ball, because that's where we have the big movers up and down. The dynasty rankings. You mentioned Kyren Williams, so let's just get it over with. Let's just get him out of the way. Kyron Williams should fire his agent. If you're going to run a 4.7, you should just not run and force NFL evaluators to watch the tape and try to time you on long runs at Notre Dame if they're really curious about what your 40 time actually is. Don't give them the satisfaction of knowing that you're slow. Say, I'm going to stand on my tape. And you might lose a round of draft capital if you do that. Now he loses 4 rounds of draft capital. Now he's dead. He's no longer a day 2 pick. He's certainly a day 3 pick. I mean, there's no way he goes day 2 now, right?
No, it's understanding draft capital, exactly what you just said, and I've alluded to with the agent thing. Understand where you're predicted. You're predicted in the second round, late second, early third, and you're like, man, I'm really not going to boost my draft spot by running this 4.7 live 40-yard dash. Don't run it. And he goes out and runs, obviously, the 4.65 with course correct. Eerily similar to my man Jamar Jefferson last year, runs a 4.65 at his pro day. But, yeah, I mean, it's just one of those situations where you need to know where you're getting mocked. This year it was Kyron Williams, late second, early third, literally plummets himself into the 7th round. I would say based off talent, he could put himself into that early 6th if someone really wants to throw the dart. But, again, it's going to be really tough sailing for Kyron Williams the rest of the way. He's going to have to run like – a 4.49 at the Notre Dame Pro Day and say, something, I was hurt at the combine. But again, I don't know how many evaluators are going to believe that whole process.
It's crazy. Who else on offense hurt themselves?
I mean, there's a couple guys that ran in the low. I mean, obviously the first one is Isaiah Spiller, right? Spiller just did not run. I thought he was the beta of the group at the combine from the interview process. Supposedly his dad was like, yeah, I begged him not to run because he's hurt, and he's going to run at the Texas A&M Pro Day. But again, I don't see 4.49 speed out of Isaiah Spiller. I see like a 4.55 guy. So
who is more likely to actually not be 100%? Drake or Spiller? Who do you believe more?
Who do I, through the process, who do I think is going to be better at the
who
end?
Do you believe more? They both said, hey, we're not 100%, we're not running. His dad said that, and London said it himself. But you heard it from London personally. So you believe London and not necessarily believe Spiller?
Yeah, I believe Drake because he was more vocal at the NFL Combine, and not only did he say, I'm going to run at the Pro Day, he actually scheduled his own pro day. So like the USC pro days a couple weeks earlier, he scheduled his own pro day for like April, like I said before, 3rd or 6th, I believe. So it's like a known thing. Like that's my goal date. That's the date I want to run. That's a date I feel like I'm going to be healthy. He said he's 15% away from being 100%. Spiller, everything there from the dog mindset, which is something that I take into account and I talk about often, but everything from the dog side of it, he was just kind of like there and he's just kind of like talking about football and I think I'm the best running back in this class, and I just like it was like very like low, like there was just nothing like.
Was Barry Sanders shy?
It was a tough time.
Do you think Barry Sanders was talking a big game at the combine? Guys are allowed to be shy, aren't they?
Shy is one thing, I think, but completely. I mean, what did he jump? Didn't he jump like 31 inches?
Yeah, it was bad,
so
dude.
I think he jumped.
We certainly punished Isaiah Spiller on the rookie rankings. PlayerProfiler.com. Check out the rookie rankings. Or Dynasty Deluxe. You can get the rankings either by getting Dynasty Deluxe or by getting the player rankings. You can subscribe to either one, and you can see exactly where Isaiah Spiller is. Spoiler alert, he's no longer the number 2 running back in this class. And we did punish him more based on the Laquan Treadwell corollary than we did Drake London for all the reasons we're talking about here. And then on the flip side, if you're Breece Hall, that's the Jamar Chase corollary. You don't necessarily need to run, but you do, and you crush it, right? So that's a different corollary, right? It's like, do you have that confidence and mindset to just run no matter what and participate in all the drills no matter what, or are you dodging? Spiller's more of a dodger, Hall more of a Jamar Chase level mindset, and there are these two ships in the night, where Spiller dropping, Breece Hall rising. Not that Breece Hall was ever behind Spiller, but it's like now disparity is huge between Hall and Spiller coming out of the combine. It matters, man. Wanting it and doing it at the combine matters.
It does matter. And again, all these things coming out about him being injured. Why then, if you're injured, why jump? Why do any of this stuff? Like a 30-inch vertical, like I'm not even saying anything at 217 pounds. Like I'm fairly confident. And as in Drake London's terms, I'm 15% away from being 100% confident I could hit 30 or 29 in the vertical, and I'm 265 pounds. So like that's not a good showing. If you know that that's what your output's going to be, don't do it. Don't show up. If you're really hurt, say it. Say, I'm going to do everything at the pro day. Wait till then. Wait. How many times have we heard that? And it's just like the Treadwell thing, like you just said. So that's kind of where I lean with Spiller from the mindset standpoint.
And now that he has no burst, I mean, he is looking like the Laquan Treadwell of running backs.
Yeah.
And we have an article on the Breakout Finder, breakoutfinder.com. You can read Noah Hill's breakdown.
Shout out.
What's wrong with Isaiah Spiller? Now, Kenneth Walker did seem to want it. I mean, he was a guy where I have rarely sensed more effort being put into the process than what I was seeing from Kenneth Walker. I mean, just did you get to have any experience with Kenneth Walker and his level of just wanting it more? Because I've never heard a guy breathe that hard through the drills.
Yeah. Every drill was like that. And then when you watch a tape of him too, it's the same way. He's the hardest runner, pure runner in this draft class for me. Like every snap is like it's the last one. Like you're trying to run and literally like put a hole in someone's chest with your helmet. And when he said people that he liked to play style after, it was Adrian Peterson, it was LT, which a lot of these guys are going to say, you know, the McCaffreys and stuff. So it's nice to see him say somebody older. But again, everything when he was getting interviewed was dialed in. It was crisp. It was positive. And it was like the alpha mindset where he's going to go do it. He's going to come, like the opposite of Spiller. It was just like Brees. Brees and Kenny Walker were on the stage together, the podiums at the same time. And they both had similar kind of mindsets and thoughts. Like Brees is like, I'm the best running back in this class. Nobody's done what I've done the last 2 years. Kenny Walker is sitting up there. Everything's positive. Everything's, you know, I went out and did what I had to do this year, and we saw it. He did. I mean,
when
you heard him run
Kenneth
that
Walker
dash,
turned
like,
to Brees Hall and said, "Dude, you're not the best. I'm the best." That would have been great.
Awesome. That would have been awesome. But again, it was the same effort though. This is an effort guy, and you saw it on the tape, and then you saw it at the combine. Like I've never heard anybody that loud and that.
It's just
can't
crazy.
even really. It was like he was like tensed up, just like full blown, and that's what you love to see. You love to see that energy, and he brought it. He brought it the whole time. He brought it.
How is this
possible?
Season. How can the guy will himself? I mean, if you're gonna be like Rudy and you're gonna will yourself to a sack in the one play that you get to actually see the field, right? He doesn't look that fast. Like when you watch him play, you don't think, oh, this is an explosive dude. This is Tevin Coleman. No, you don't think that at all when you look at Kenneth Walker. I was worried for him, but I was happy that he wasn't dodging. So I was like, okay, Kenneth, like show us what you got. We'll see. You know, and I already in my head, I was like, okay, if he runs a 4.55, what are we going to do? And da-da-da-da-da, right? No, baby. He ran a 4.38 with decent burst.
Yeah.
And you can't effort your way out of the vertical jump.
Yep.
Wow.
He when he runs, it looks like he's 225 pounds. It looks like he's one of these bigger backs. And what's he at 211 pounds? Like it's just a pure effort thing. And this is also one of the things that goes along with the mentals is, you know, sometimes when you get out of high school or whatever, you get past these stages where you don't realize how much energy you put in. You don't realize how mental sports are, and then you get past it and you're like, oh wow, I literally should have or could have done this. And this is like one of those things where it feels like he sees past where he's at. Does that make sense? Like he's a professional playing a college game, and he's like, all right, my mind needs to be here. I need to be turned on here. I need to put full effort here. He did that. Like, he's like, damn, the situation wasn't right at Wake Forest. He comes to Michigan State. It flips. You see the energy at every level of the process. So, I mean,
how could the NFL possibly draft Spiller over Walker and Hall? How?
The only reason you would draft Spiller over a Walker is because you do not trust any priors, or you didn't do deep enough research on Kenneth Walker in the receiving game. That would be like the only reason you could be like, oh, because Spiller is smoother in the receiving game. But from every other aspect, like the patience, if you're going for patience or you're doing receiving, give me Rachaad White. But if you're going from a pure running back standpoint, you have no real argument to take Spiller over Kenneth Walker as a pure runner, period. Like, you can't.
There's so many players to draft, right? There's so many options when you're in a rookie draft. You can just choose not to draft guys that dodge the 40. You can just choose that, right? This year it was Spiller. Before it was Treadwell. Every year there's someone, right? You could just choose and say to yourself, as a matter of principle, I'm just not going to draft that guy, period. Because there is like I said, there is a loosely correlated signal about skipping the combine and how that impacts your future production. So just say no to that. There's plenty of guys that are out here wanting it so bad and then delivering a 4.38 with the right mindset. Like, if you, especially in Dynasty, it's one thing in a best ball draft where it's like, hey, we have this guy for a season and he can use his natural skills to go out and maybe break some long runs, score some touchdowns, score some fantasy points. Great. But in the longer term, which is what Dynasty is focused on, having this guy for his full rookie contract, well, I would want the guy that's checking all the boxes across the board and not someone who's dodging. And dodging one of the biggest, most important data points that we have, the 40 time for wide receivers, for running backs. The 40 time for running backs is absolutely critical. And it's why some of these guys moved up a lot. You're like, I can't believe you guys moved up player X so much. It's like, well, the 40 time, especially when you look at speed score, size adjusted speed is incredibly predictive for running backs, much more so than for wide receivers. And that's why you saw the biggest movers post-combine were all running backs. They weren't the wide receivers. The wide receivers were nominally moved up and down. Some of these running backs spiked. And then others, like poor Kyron Williams, cratered. At wide receiver, though, if we are talking about those that did move down, you have to talk about David Bell.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a tough one because everything's there on the film, and it's everything that we saw, just like with Tyler Johnson. That's the horrid thing that nobody wants to say is it's mimicking exactly what Tyler Johnson's situation was just a few years ago. He's lower percentile. What's he run? 4.65, and he comes out a year early. Did he get those phone calls that said, "Hey man, not this year. Just go back to school, come back out next year"? We don't know if he got those phone calls or if he went against them, but everything he said was positive. They asked him in an interview, you're not that great after the catch. What are you doing to work on that? And he kind of laid it out exactly the things that he's working on in practice down there. I think he's training down at I Am Athlete with Brandon Marshall and Chad Ochocinco, so that's good. But again, the 4.65 in this situation, I don't think he can be considered a top 10 pick just because he's not as smooth in transition in the routes as like a Keenan Allen, a guy that runs that slow.
You mean a top 10 pick in Dynasty rookie drafts?
Yeah. Where he was getting considered because we expected him to run in the low 4.4, like a 4.49, 4.51. That area would have been just fine for a David Bell.
Yeah, I was very hopeful that he would run like a 4.48. Exactly.
Yeah, that would have been just fine. It's nothing special, but it's exactly what the tape looked like. And 1,000 yards as a freshman, obviously with Rondale on the field at the same time. This has been the guy that everyone was pointing to. They're like, this guy's going to be better than Rondale Moore from a receiving standpoint, not like a weapon standpoint, but from a receiving standpoint. And he looks like that on tape. So it's very interesting to see him come in and do what he did and kind of disappoint everybody. So,
yeah, but he didn't crater. We moved him down a tier. That's it. That's what happens.
Yeah. No, yeah, he didn't crater like Kyron Williams. That's the difference between the running backs and the receivers, like you said. The 40 doesn't matter as much, but it still matters.
All right, yeah. So let's not dwell too much on the negatives. On the positive side, Rachaad White. No one moved up as much as Rachaad White. Oh baby.
The White brothers, man, Zamir and Rachaad. I was trying to vouch for Rashad before, but there just wasn't a lot to vouch for. The problem is between him and Spiller. And I think for me, I think he would be ahead of Spiller if it wasn't for him being 23.1 years old already and Spiller being 20 and a half. That's like really what's, for me, holding him back from being above him. But again, Rashad White's done everything. He's been at a number of schools.
That's 2.5 years.
That's what I'm saying.
Two and a half. That's a chasm. 2.5 years of early career production where you are pre-age apex. Now, the NFL workload is really what grinds a lot of these players down, but, I mean, age matters, especially for running backs. It's not as much age-adjusted production in college that we care about. It's how early are you entering the draft and how many years pre-25 are we going to have production from you for our Dynasty team. With Rashad White, it's a couple of years. With Isaiah Spiller, it's 4 to 5 years.
It's tough with Rashad White because he's been overlooked at every stage of the game. Coming out of high school, there was nothing there. I think he went to Nebraska Kearney for a year, and then he ended up going to Mount San Antonio in California. And then that's where he actually met Antonio Pierce, who was at Arizona State, and that's who brought him to Arizona State. And now Pierce is now with the Raiders. So it's just kind of been a weird career arc for Rashad White. But again, you saw 43 receptions this year, 1,000 on the ground. Last year in a COVID-shortened season, 4 games, 400 yards on 40 carries and 5 touchdowns. So it's like he was going to do this last year. It was going to happen. And they had him listed at 6'2" on the website, but he was 6 foot, which is still not a problem.
No, that's great.
And then
that's great. You don't want a guy that's that upright of a runner. If a guy's 6 foot, that's fine. Then he can be David Johnson. If he's 6'2", right? Then we go, okay, are you going to be Derrick Henry? And if you're not Derrick Henry, who are you going to be? It's going to be tricky.
That's the thing, was like the running style. It's a little more upright, but I compared it to a Le'Veon Bell running style. And then you've said David Johnson, and then our friend JJ Zachariason said David Johnson was the best comparable in his model. So that's exactly where you're going to see him play. It's in that David Johnson, Le'Veon Bell role. And I think he's smooth like those guys. I've heard a little bit of Kamara because Kamara plays in that same archetype where he's a smooth, patient runner. This guy has some of the best patience in this entire class. And he's just a smooth operator in every facet of the game. And he bursts through all these pockets where a lot of these other guys can't. I really like what White has. The only problem is he's 23.1 years old. So he's going to touch the field at 23 and a half, which hurts him. But also think about the I kind of lost my brain there, but like think about the he's 23 and a half. Like he's more mentally stable than a lot of these other guys are 19, 20 coming out of into the NFL, and they're just fresh. So
yeah, this class certainly increased its overall value with this combine, especially the running backs coming in a lot faster than we expected. This went from like a 20th percentile class for Dynasty to like a 40th percentile class. And especially on the strength of the running backs, for Superflex, it's still not great, right? It's still, in the, say, the bottom 25th percentile for Superflex classes. Yeah. But non-Superflex single quarterback, this is just a solid, good class, and it's reminiscent, especially with the running backs. The running back class reminds me of the 2015 class because if Rashad White is David Johnson and Kenneth Walker comps very closely to Melvin Gordon, Breece Hall to Todd Gurley, Isaiah Spiller to Duke Johnson, you can go down the board, and there's a lot of close comps. And I don't want to comp anyone to David Cobb from that class, but that was a deep running back class with a lot of size-adjusted athletes, and it didn't actually become the class we expected. We projected that class to be one of the best of all time at the time. Yep. So now we've been burned and we're not, getting out over our skis with this particular class. But it's very encouraging. It's a very, very encouraging to see Zamir White running a 4.4. I mean, he has to get hugely boosted.
There's a lot of talk about him being like finally healthy because he's coming off of two torn ACLs. We talked about him earlier in like the November area. We started doing these rookie mock drafts. You can jump in those. Email me, Cody at Roto Underworld, to jump in rookie mocks. But you took Zamir White because I told you like this guy's good. And then that's when the national media really pushed him down. But again, it's this Georgia situation where He's coming out of college with 380 total carries, coming off 2 torn ACLs, and he's fully healthy, running a 4.40. This guy was almost a 5-star prospect coming out of high school, and if he's now through Georgia, he's got that experience, he's got pretty fresh tread on his tires, and he's healthy. Like,
teammate score was
high.
What
am I missing here?
Right, James Cook was also on the backfield.
What am I missing?
I don't know. There's nothing to miss. We love him. We love him. You can go from
Swift
not knowing whether or not this guy is even going to be an NFL player to being in love with him after the combine. At the running back position, that's allowed. You're not allowed to do that at wide receiver, right? You're allowed to discount guys, move them between tiers, move guys up if they exceed expectations in the athleticism drills. Good, cool. That's the right process. At running back, it can be everything. With Zamir White, especially a player that's not catching passes in college, the 40 is everything. Everything is at stake. And he ran it as if everything was at stake.
That's the thing, is like his mindset to come in when he was getting interviewed, he's like, he literally only said, I just want to show people that I am fast. And he was dialed in guy. But you're talking about teammate score with James Cook. James Cook I don't think it's an argument. He's the best receiving back in this class, and there's been too much conversation about him being one of the top running backs in this class among NFL circles. But teammates with DeAndre Swift as a true freshman, Zamir still had 80 carries in comparison to Swift's 196. So Swift was getting those carries as a true freshman, had 400 yards, had a couple of touchdowns. So it's just the way, like, it's just part of the process. I think he's a much better running back than James Cook, and I think he's just one of these guys that's just getting overlooked that shouldn't be.
And Brian Robinson's getting overlooked. I'm watching these mock drafts, and I'm seeing Brian Robinson slip and slip and slip. It doesn't make sense. The guy also exceeded expectations. Most of these running backs exceeded expectations, especially with the 40. The danger with Brian Robinson was that he's going to go ahead and run a 4.7. No, he ran a 4.53. And when you adjust for his size at 225 pounds, that's an 85th percentile speed score on Player Profiler. That's really good.
Isn't that crazy to see where we were, just talking about Zamir back in November, when we were doing the mock collection for NFL mocks, talking about Brian Robinson being RB1 in this class, being a top 30 NFL pick, and now you're seeing him dropped all the way to the 3rd round in these mocks, and now he's a value. And whereas in prior years you talked about the helmet, it was Alabama helmet, Brian Robinson's going to be a 1st-round pick, and people actually went away from that, thankful to Breece Hall and Kenneth Walker and all this stuff, but they went away from him being a projected 1st-round pick during the college season to now being 3rd round and actually becoming a value. And a guy 4.53, 85th percentile speed score. This guy's gonna get, I said this multiple times, this guy's going to land somewhere and gonna get 200 plus carries from year one. It's just the way it is. It's what he's built for. He's the biggest guy in this class, the most overpowering running back in this class. He's not the best, but he can run between. He's a between the tackles grinder. It's going to get 200 carries. It's just the way it is. You and Andy from the Future Cast both really like Pierre Strong. What do you like about Pierre Strong? Because, I mean, yes, he ran the 4.37 at 207 pounds, which is incredible, right? But what else about him justifies him moving up so much, so fast? He's got great breakaway acceleration. He's not overly fast like you saw in the 40-yard dash in the game. He's great at following his blockers and just finding those opening holes. His vision's pretty solid, but again, we've seen some Elijah Mitchell comps lately, and like Alex Dunlap talked about before, the other day we did a show, is John Lynch nicknamed Elijah Mitchell Drano. Drano, that obviously goes in your drain, clogs the drain. It's because he finds every crack and every crevice. The problem is Pierre Strong isn't quite on that level. You follow me there? Like Drano goes between all the hair and cleans it all out. That's what John Lynch compared him to. But the problem is that's not exactly what Pierre Strong does. He's not a guy that's going to find the hole before the hole's there. He's a guy that's going to be right on his blockers behind, and he's going to find that hole and burst through it. He's not going to be that next level tackle breaker. I think he comps closer to a James Robinson than he does an Elijah Mitchell. He just happens to have the speed of Elijah Mitchell. I think that's where he fits in. I think he's going to be a machine. He's a requisite receiver. I like him a lot. I really do. I actually would lean more toward the Elijah Mitchell comp, but Kevin Harris is very interesting. He didn't run for some reason, but when he went and participated in the vertical and the broad jump, a lot fewer concerns with him
because he actually has great burst. He's super explosive, unlike Isaiah Spiller. And he was a dominant runner at South Carolina, which is a major conference program. And he was also a highly regarded prospect coming in, a highly regarded high school recruit. So there's a lot to like about this guy. He also is, even though he's big, he has a season with over 20 catches. So I had expected him to be drafted prior to Zamir White, be ranked ahead of Zamir White all along. These were two players that I thought were real similar in that they were sharing the backfield with another quality running back. They had the size. We didn't necessarily know how explosive they were. And now both of them together are saying, oh, we're young. We were high pedigree recruits. And, oh, by the way, we're explosive, and you need to take us seriously.
Yeah, I really like Kevin Harris. He actually, I had him considered, as my RB4 before the season even started, and then that was coming off of his sophomore season with over 1,100 yards rushing. I think this is the guy that profiles closest to a Nick Chubb. And Nick Chubb runs a 4.52. If this guy goes to his pro day and he runs in that area, I think that's going to be your guy that's going to profile
big pro
like that.
Day
He's going to
coming
be
up
your
for Kevin Harris. Huge pro
big
day.
grind that can catch 220 pounds. Good contact balance, not great. Elite burst inside the 5-yard line. When you're inside the 5, give him the ball. It's over. Okay hands, but again, they're not highlight reel hands. You saw Zaquandre be the receiving back at South Carolina. And then talking to Zaquandre quick, he compared himself and his playing style to Tony Pollard. So if he fits right in that mold, I got no problem with that mold for Zaquandre White.
This is why we love prospects with great teammates, because we know they can't just saturate the box score with numbers. You can't. If you're sharing a backfield with James Cook, you can't. If you're sharing a backfield with Zaquandre White, you can't do that. And it creates value. I mean, the guy had over 1,100 yards in only 10 games the year prior. This is how you find value. It's going to be hard to get me off the running back position. It might be the case, and this has been the case with my mock so far, that I go wide receiver in round 1 and then just running backs the rest of the way. Like round 2, round 3, round 4, round 5 of a Dynasty rookie draft, because there's so much depth, there's so much athleticism in this class. I'm just keep hitting that running back button over and over and over again.
I think I'm going to have a lot of Zamir White and Kevin Harris. 3 years in school and coming out with under 400 total touches. Going to be explosive for Kevin Harris. He already is. And Zamir runs at 4.40. I think, Zamir White, Kevin Harris seem like they're going to be your value versions of the Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker duo. You're going to be able to get Zamir and Kevin in the second round.
And that's the guy that's going to be moving up. Just understand this. Kevin White runs fast. Wait, did I say Kevin White?
Yeah, I was going to say Kevin.
Did I say Kevin White?
Kevin Harris.
Why did I say Kevin White? What? No, because Kevin White did run fast.
Yeah.
Kevin White was really bad. If Kevin White was a running back, maybe they should have converted him to running back. That might have helped his career. If Kevin Harris runs fast at his pro day, you're going to see his ranking on our Dynasty rankings and the rookie rankings pop. Like Ty Chandler. Ty Chandler popped, right? We didn't know what he was. No big, production profile to speak of. Not an electric receiver. But then he comes in, he runs a 4.38 at 204 pounds. You're like, okay, this prompts you to go do more research. And then you went and did more research on Ty Chandler, and what'd you find?
This guy is solid. He's a transfer from Tennessee. A lot of guys remember him. Sophomore season, 600 yards. Junior season, 600 yards. And then I thought he was going to come out last year. That's why on Player Profiler he had a comp, because he actually got kind of lumped in with that last class and whatever. But he waits. He transfers to North Carolina after Javonte and Michael Carter leave. He comes over there. He shows great burst, great ability to break away on simple dives, like just a dive play, find that hole, get out. He's got great hesitation. He's a very fluid pass catcher, not the best in the class by any means, but he tends to run into defenders and just kind of find those guys. That's why that's kind of what separates him from the top to the bottom, is he just doesn't have that true breakaway vision where he can find the hole, boom, he's gone. He tends to run into guys instead of run around them. But I do like Ty Chandler quite a bit. Again, 4.38 40-yard dash. You can't teach speed like that anyway, especially at the running back position. So Ty Chandler is going to be a value guy. I'm interested to see where he lands in the NFL, like by round.
Why would we
like, I don't know.
have him ahead of, say, James Cook?
Because he's a better pure runner than James Cook is. James Cook is going to be a satellite plus guy. He's very, very svelte, as you'd say, in the 195-pound range. I just think from a pure runner, I would prefer Ty Chandler.
Yeah, James Cook, 27.8 BMI.
Yeah.
He is super svelte, and yes, he ran a 4.42. He better run a 4.42, right? He's interesting. There's upside there because had he had that backfield to himself, he could have put up like 40 catches.
Yeah.
And so I can see some more upside there. It just really depends on draft capital with him. That's the thing. A guy like Ty Chandler, just understand when you're looking at the Dynasty rankings, understand a guy like Ty Chandler, he's maxed out. This is about as high as a guy with this profile could possibly get. If a James Cook gets day 3, if a James Cook gets day 2 draft capital, then he's going to leapfrog him.
Yep.
Right? But we just don't know. Right? We just don't know. There's just not enough there.
That's where like the Ty Chandler shows out at the combine better than Dameon Pierce. Dameon Pierce did what we expected from the athletic standpoint. Chandler, you can't teach 4.38. He can run. He's a better pure runner than a James Cook. But the problem is with James Cook is James Cook can climb. James Cook can climb up to that Jerome Ford area, pending where he gets drafted, because there's been conversations that I don't like hearing, but there's been conversations where people have James Cook in that 1, 2, 3 area. There, I said it. I didn't want to say it, but they have James Cook in that 1, 2, 3 area from overall running back standpoint.
Wait,
in this class.
1, 2, 3 area?
Yeah, that's exactly. And I don't love hearing that or seeing that or saying that, but that's conversations that were had. Period. Like, you can't lie about that, because and a lot of the narrative is being spelt towards his brother. So if he gains 10 pounds, gains 5 pounds, and I don't think he's as good of a pure runner at all as what Dalvin is. He's a better pass receiver, so that's going to help him at the next level. And maybe he gets into an offense.
Is he though? 8.2% college target share isn't that great.
He can run every route. He can run every route. He can play outside. He can play inside in the slot. He can, in motion, in these jet flies. He can play everywhere on the field. He's just not as great from the running back standpoint into the hole, like a Zamir way. That's why they had Zamir way. There's a 1-2 punch. Zamir runs in the middle, and Cook can do pretty much everything else on the field. That's why I don't have him up in that conversation, and I don't think at the NFL level you can. From a satellite standpoint, I think he's going to be one of the best in the NFL, but we're talking about 200-plus touches. I don't think he's going to be touching that.
Yeah, so that's why we have him ahead of Batty. He should be ahead of Ely. Ely was disappointing. It was a bummer with Ely. That was you're like, oh, this guy, that's fine. What's wrong with running a 4.52? Well, at 190, you can't do that, right? It's a little bit different if you could do it at 200, but not at 190, man. At 190, yes, he's going to be a productive satellite back, but he's not going to be James Cook. It sucks.
That's the guy that
I was hoping that it would be flipped. Right, my hope was that it was Cook that ran the 4.52. Ely runs the 4.43, and then it's on. Then I'm like, okay, this could be interesting. Now I'm less enthusiastic.
Ely was a very tough one because we saw him come in at 190 on the Ole Miss page, and then he comes in at 189 here, and like you said, 5'8", 189. Like, there's not a lot there for you. And when I went back yesterday and looked at him even some more, you can see that speed. Now that you see it, you can see that acceleration. He has the great acceleration out of the backfield, but it's like he can't get to that next level. He can't even get into second gear, let alone third gear. And then the real comp that I really saw from him, just kind of like based on his running style, was I don't know if you remember Maggot from Longest Yard. That was him. Like, he has that burst and that quickness inside, but then it's just like it's not there long run. So
that's fine, right? It's fine. If he's going to be catching passes in the NFL, you want to try to draft this guy in round 4 and 5 in a Dynasty rookie draft. You do want that guy, right? Zaquandre White, you want that guy. Max Borghi, you want that guy. Max Borghi is interesting because he came in heavier than we expected. Now, he came in at, 210?
Yeah. Max Borghi, he was a guy that was also talked about early on in the process. I think as a sophomore, 86 receptions, 600 yards, and 800 yards rushing. So, 1,400 total yards from scrimmage as a sophomore at Washington State. They labeled him at 205 pounds. He comes in at 210. In interviews with him, like he was the last guy on the stage, and it was like, that literally looked like Christian McCaffrey's doppelganger. And there's been conversations about that in articles that I've read, and they're not the same guy, but you need to at least entertain that. The problem with him is he did not run, so we don't know exactly how fast he is or how athletic he is, or if he's even should be considered in there. I'm not sure about that one either.
Pacheco ran.
Pacheco did run.
Isaiah Pacheco was fast. Not on my radar. I got to admit it. I put my, sorry everybody. Isaiah Pacheco, not on my radar.
Pacheco ran very, very fast. Pacheco came in and from the jump when he entered the building, had Gucci glasses on, had a manicure done. He's sitting up on the stage, and he just looked like this massive brute. He looked a lot bigger than what he came in at. I want to say he came in at like 5'8", 215 maybe.
Yeah, 5'10", 216. He's
5'10",
Christian Michael, isn't he? Christian Michael.
Yes, so that's a good one. That's a very good one. I said Kenneth Farrow, so oddly enough. So like that same type of mold. Great contact balance and burst off the contact, but it's just not an efficient runner. Everything's short, choppy steps, very, very fast. But again, it's just it's a very loose, very not technically sound, crazy running style where it's just like everything's like shaking and moving really quickly, but it's not. There's nothing efficient, but he's just like getting there really fast. And it's not smooth like you see a Breece Hall kind of go boom, cut, boom, this, boom, that. His is just everything's like hair on fire. You're getting, just it's not beautiful to watch. But again, the speed is the speed. Kind of reminds you of like the situation last year with Kene Nwangwu. So that's obviously the kind of where we're looking at with him from an opportunity standpoint. Rutgers has been horrid the last few years. So that kind of explains why him and Bo Melton kind of did what they did.
He's pretty capped out, right? Like
yeah,
his lifetime value rating isn't going to go up much. This is pretty much his ceiling on the rankings. Like if you told me that Pacheco will never be higher than the RB15 or whatever he is in this class, and his lifetime value rating will never go above 20 in his career, I would believe you. Like that, I would believe that. But there is upside with this kind of speed score. There really is, and that needs to be factored in. A couple other disappointments. We liked Sincere McCormick and Tyler Allgeier heading in. They were not athletic. They're not going to be relevant. It's sad. It's really sad, especially for Allgeier, because if he was fast, that's why there's so much at stake. We said so much at stake with Harris and Zamir White and Tyler Allgeier. If you're between the tackles tank, you got to go be fast, man. You got to go be a tiger tank out there, and Allgeier was not.
Yeah, we had this whole big tier of McCormick, Allgeier, and Abram Smith at the beginning of this whole process. We had these guys in the teams.
Smith. Oh, God.
And they all just, start to finish, Abram Smith has been the biggest disappointment for me. And then obviously Allgeier and McCormick coming in and running a little bit slower. These guys profile as what they are. They're going to be these between the tackles grinders. One of these, I have a feeling one of these two guys is going to latch on somewhere in some opportunity. Allgeier did talk about, they said, if you were asked to play anywhere else, would you do it in the NFL? And he said, of course, obviously, your classic response. So if he was asked to go back to linebacker, he said he would do it. I'm sure Abram Smith probably feels the same way, but I think McCormick is going to be the one guy that if I was going to throw a dart, I would throw the dart at McCormick just because, like we've talked about many times before, it's that junior situation where you're coming out as a junior, and the NFL calls and they said, hey, dude, we really think you should go back to school, especially from the small school. We really think you should go back to school, or, hey, we think you should come out. And he still came out. He didn't run the best. But again, I don't think it's a death sentence for Sincere McCormick at 4'6", 205 pounds. Hurts. But we did see 24, 20, 22 receptions each year at UTSA. I'm not going to say I'm going to latch on by any means. But again, 900 yards rushing as a true freshman, 1,400 back-to-back. He does not look bad on tape at all. That 4.60 just really, really does scare me. I'd like to see him do something different maybe at his pro day, like see if he improves a tenth of a second from pro day, because tenth of a second pro day bumps him to a 4.55 for us. I think we're talking about him in a little different realm if he does that.
He's not going to do that. So Abram Smith, 13 receptions, was actually good for a 12% target share because that was the Baylor offense. They ran Abram Smith, or they dumped it off to Abram Smith. But that is one of the least meaningful college target shares I've ever seen, is the Abram Smith 85th percentile college target share, knowing that the raw number was just 13, right? You want both. You want both the high target share with actual catches, right? It loses meaning when it's only 13 catches because it's such a low volume pass attack. Come on now. Now at wide receiver, there's less to talk about because the combine is just less important for receivers than it is for running backs, as we've mentioned. But of all the wide receivers, Christian Watson be the big winner, right?
Yeah, I think Christian Watson and Sky Moore, those are your clear two big winners from this whole event. Sky Moore had the biggest hands in the class. You talked about him being this year the basically a doppelganger for Christian Kirk. I think that lines very well. Talking to Christian Watson at the Senior Bowl, he grew up in Tampa Bay. He watched a lot of Mike Evans, Julio Jones, and then obviously goes out and does pretty much like what we haven't seen since Calvin and Julio at the NFL Combine, which is awesome. There's been rumors and talk about people mocking Christian Watson up into the teens in the first round of the NFL draft. I call complete BS on that. I think you're going to see Watson. You're going to. I don't think you're going. I don't think you can depend on from an NFL franchise. Like we've talked about it for years. Obviously, we like these smaller school guys.
Yeah.
And especially coming from a run. Yeah, I know, but you have to look at it from an NFL standpoint. You're betting on North Dakota State receiver who's had 43 receptions, 34 receptions. It's been really boom bust at the college level. You're going to bet on that guy in round one over a George Pickens that kind of is in the similar realm, more talent per se at Georgia. Then you're going to bet on that being from a Christian Watson who's been in school for 5 years. I think you're going to bet that more on Pickens. I think Christian Watson and Sky Moore both classify as that perfect first guy off the board, second guy off the board in round two.
And I don't see a problem with guys.
And they're both small school guys. I think they're both top 50 picks, but I just do not see how, as an NFL franchise, you could take a Christian Watson inside round one, especially over some of these other guys in this class that we have. Pickens, even a hurt Jamison Williams, Jahan Dotson's gonna go round one. I think you're gonna see. Yeah,
I'm with you.
You can win to a certain point. You can't go past okay. If this guy went to Alabama and he had the same output at Alabama or Georgia or whatever, these SEC schools, these Big Ten schools, okay, I get it. Different situation because it's a different level of talent. When you're playing South Dakota State and you're playing Montana, it's a different level of talent. He is a stud. But again, these guys, I feel like you can only get drafted so high. You can only get drafted so high in certain situations, no matter what the talent looks like on the film and how much research you've done.
Yeah, if you're an NFL team, you really should not be drafting a small school wide receiver in round one. You can't do it because production is such a huge part of the receiving prospect profile that to have most of those numbers be achieved against lower level competition, it really skews things and opens up that Corey Davis trapdoor. Right, we've seen this, the Corey Davis corollary. You got to be careful. You got to be careful making the small school wide receiver, especially one that doesn't participate in the combine, the first wide receiver off the board. I mean, I still can't believe that happened. I can't believe it happened. There are other positions that are a little more physical, where either size or athleticism is more important, where I could say yes, push the button on a small school player. So, look at Trevor Penning. Right? Trevor Penning's a great example. He's going to go in the first round from Northern Iowa. Why? Because he's an offensive lineman with the requisite size and skill set, and you got to get that guy. There are so few of those guys out there. There are a lot of wide receivers that are going to look something close to Christian Watson At corner, for example, Tariq Woolen ran a 4.26, and then he absolutely melted the explosion drills. So with a guy like that, I know there's Kevin Kings. I know that there's like freak athlete corners that flame out because they don't have the right technique or they don't have the right headspace. But I would be more willing to say shoot for upside at corner with a Tariq Woolen than I would be at wide receiver with a Christian Watson.
Exactly. And that's the thing, is like you saw with Byron Jones, you seen with Jeremy Chin and these other guys. And the easiest thing to point to, I kind of want to just say with the same thing you mentioned, Corey Davis there. There is a little bit of a difference between the MAC and FCS. I know North Dakota State's the best school in the FCS, hands down, but like there is a tad of a difference as far as like competition, who they're playing and stuff like that. But the straight
the MAC
up
is better.
Exactly. The reason that you can't draft a guy like Christian Watson there is because you look down the street at Northern Iowa, which is where Penning went, and you have Isaiah Weston, 6'4", 210, same body type as Watson. This guy, 800 yards, 1,000 yards. He actually performed better in 3 seasons at Northern Iowa than Watson did, and he blazed at the combine. So if you're looking for that body type, I think Watson's better than Weston. But again, this is exactly what we're talking about. It's two guys that did similar stuff at the FCS level. You just can't use – that's a fireable offense in the NFL. That's a fireable offense to be like, oh, yeah, this guy, he's that much different than this other guy, and he's a first-round talent. He's better than, this George Pickens and X and Y and all this stuff.
Yeah.
It's just a tougher sell.
Christian Watson, spoiler alert, I'll tell you this. We don't have Watson in the Pickens tier in the rookie rankings. No way. He moved up a lot, but not that much.
And we love him. Don't get me wrong. We love him. And even if other people have Watson in that tier, that's on them. But again, we love Watson. We just understand the positional opportunity and the fact that this guy's 23 years old, and it's just there's differences there. There's just differences.
That's the thing. When you look at why did you guys move up Sky Moore and Christian Watson so much more than other receivers? And we're like, well, because it's just like these primarily between the tackles runners. Everything was at stake. If you're slow from a small school, you're done. I mean, it's possible. Certainly nothing's impossible, but you're probably not going to happen. It's going to be such a vanishingly small probability that you break out. And every year, oh, this guy's Antonio Brown. No, this guy's Antonio Brown. No, there was one Antonio Brown the last decade, right? It's probably not going to happen. Just like a between the tackles runner, right? Is probably not going to happen. Oh, I saw Arian Foster do it. Yeah, Arian Foster was a once-a-decade prospect, and he wasn't even drafted. So he didn't get the draft capital either, and he still broke out in the NFL. You can't be chasing these outliers like Arian Foster and Antonio Brown. That's not a good idea. So that's why pre-combine, Sky Moore and Christian Watson were down here. Right? They were in some of the lower tiers because we were just like, we have no idea. This guy runs a 4.6. It's over. It's not happening. He's not David Bell. David Bell can run a 4.6 with 1,000 yards in the Big Ten as a freshman, still get drafted, let's say, round 4 or 5, and be a quality pick in a Dynasty rookie draft. Maybe now round 3 or 4. But my problem is the way I'm structuring my rookie drafts, especially this year with this running back class, as soon as I get past Sky Moore and Calvin Austin, I lose interest very, very quickly. And I'm just like going best available running back, ideally a guy with explosiveness.
Yeah. And I think that's where you get into that next tier of like, the Calvin Austin. Calvin Austin's another interesting guy that blazed. And I think he's some mixture of the Rondale, Elijah Moore, Hollywood Brown type tier. Built like Hollywood Brown, but again, better separation, quicker agility. And we saw Tutu Atwell get drafted in the second round by the Rams last year.
Yeah, but Tutu Atwell was 155. This guy's at least 170. He barely hits the thresholds where you're like, this guy is a playmaker. He was great at the Senior Bowl. And if there's one thing that you want from day 3 picks, it is speed.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not comparing him to Tutu Atwell. I'm saying the situation is you saw Tutu go in round 2. Would not surprise me if Kelvin went in round 2, just because of what we've seen. Guys like Hollywood.
No,
that's what we've seen. Guys like Hollywood.
That ruins it. That fucking ruins it, Cody.
I know, but I'm saying like this is.
He's gonna go round 2. Like, do you think I have any Tutu Atwell? Think I have any Mecole Hardman in Dynasty?
No.
Fuck no. I'm not drafting these guys to go round 2. I'm looking for the next John Brown, a guy you can get in the 3rd round of a Dynasty rookie draft who runs a sub 4.4 from a small school. That's the guy I want. They go and push up this Calvin Austin into the 2nd round. He's ruined in Dynasty. You can't get him. Especially if he goes to a great offense.
Yeah.
Then he's really ruined.
Well, you just brought up the guy. You said John Brown. Danny Gray is John Brown. That's your guy. 4.33,
there it
98th
is.
percentile, 40, 82nd percentile speed score, 6 foot 186 out of SMU. For years at SMU, it's been Reggie Robertson, and then I think he's been at SMU for like 6 years now, and he is completely plummeted through the process. He was at one time thought of as a 3rd round pick, and I don't think Robertson's going to get drafted. Danny Gray is that burner. Danny Gray, talking to some people inside the Cowboys, they're like, this guy's going to blaze. We really like what Danny Gray's doing. So I think the NFL is going to like Danny Gray. He is 23 years old, but again, you can't teach 4.33 speed. And that's something Jameson Williams kind of took from him. That saying right there is like, one of the things with Jameson Williams is he's like, you can't teach my speed. That's what he said. So, it
turns out Velus Jones would disagree.
Velus Jones, another one. Spent 4 years at USC and then transferred to Tennessee. He's been working out with Amari Rodgers, Packers, and then Josh Palmer, your favorite from last year, who's with the Chargers. Another guy that went to Tennessee. But Velus Jones did great at the Senior Bowl. Really liked what we saw from him there. And when I interviewed him, I said, who's your guy that you model your game after? Who do you, close to? I said 3,000 special teams yards is kind of tough to teach. And he's like Deebo Samuel. Everybody wants to compare themselves to Deebo Samuel, but I punt return. Deebo Samuel doesn't punt return. And that was kind of where his mind was at. So I really do like Velus Jones. The only problem is guy's going to be 25 years old when day 1 comes around.
He's probably not good at football. Or I should say the act of playing wide receiver in the sport of football.
Yes.
I think he's going to be a great special teamer. But this is what happens. We get caught up in this post-combine hype bubble, especially with the wide receivers, and we get excited. And what happens? These guys are perfectly fine, perfectly acceptable, high-quality special teams players. But if you're not going to be anything until your age 23 season, and you put up 800 yards was good, 75% catch rate, 22% target share. It's all good, right? It's good. But you're going against corners that are 3 and 4 years younger than you. The ability to be impressed really wanes at that point for anyone. It's like, man, I don't know. So that was one of those where just depends on where they get drafted. Velus Jones and Danny Gray could easily flip, but Danny Gray coming from SMU, he's probably not going to go as high as Velus Jones. So that's where we have. But there's such a tier break. This is a jarring tier break when you go from the Alex Pierce, who moved up, good for him, super athletic, Justin Ross, John Mechie, and then there's this tier break down to all these other guys. It's just like, woof, like probably a special teamer. We basically have identified 15 wide receivers that we think are going to be something at the wide receiver position, and then a whole bunch of another 15 guys that are probably special teamers if they make the league, they latch on at all.
And the positive thing is some of those guys are fast. Like we said, Velus, Bo Melton, Danny Gray, those guys, Tyquan Thornton, those guys are – so someone's going to pop in there. It's just a matter of like unforeseen things like a Velus. Like Velus never really broke out as a receiver. It's going to be unforeseen things. Whereas you talk about that last tier, a guy that I don't want to go over is Alec Pierce, who after the Senior Bowl, I told you, I was like, I don't have a lot of confidence in Alec Pierce because this guy did not look great the first 2 days at the Senior Bowl. He looked tight in and out of routes. He's a downfield guy, and then he comes in, he blazes. He runs 4.41, 96th percentile speed, 94th percentile burst, 29th percentile agility. And I was like, that really hits exactly what I saw at the Senior Bowl, where he was tight in the hips and everything just wasn't crisp and clean. But then this is a guy that you can see get drafted in round 2. You can see definitely get drafted in round 3. And the NFL likes him. He wouldn't have left the Senior Bowl. And this was my question was, why are you on my flight out of the Senior Bowl on Thursday afternoon? Why are you on my flight? And there's Friday's practice and then there's Saturday's game, and this guy's leaving town. I was like, either he's getting bad news or good news, or he's hurt. And he wasn't hurt. So he obviously got good news. He comes to Combine, blows it up, 6'3", 211. The trash man who I spent a week with from Roster Watch last week with Alex Dunlap, the trash man comped him to an Allen Lazard. So I like that comp a lot for Alec Pierce. That same situation. I don't hate that, but again, I think he fits right in this tier of guys.
Whoa. Trash man.
What?
Allen Lazard wins because Allen Lazard is technically sound. Allen Lazard is a quality receiver that lacks burst. So wait a second. If he's saying, basically what the trash man is saying is this is a hyper athletic version of Allen Lazard, and if I had the opportunity to get the hyper athletic version of Allen Lazard, I would be the first in line to get that guy if I were an NFL GM. So that's huge praise. Well, that's why he's in this tier. That's why he is moved up past these players that are special teams only.
I like the situation. That's what I'm saying is like the few boxes that you check is like Jahan Dotson didn't show up to the Senior Bowl. Obviously got some positives. I think he's going to be a first round pick. Alec Pierce obviously showed up, did a couple days, left. Got to be a positive. Blows up the combine. Like you said, when you pull these guys side by side, Lazard, again, 26th percentile agility, not as fast as Alec Pierce. So again, if Alec Pierce is a hyper Allen Lazard, I got to be a fan.
The trash man knows things. He did like Denzel Mims, but he does typically know things. So it's interesting. He's an interesting guy. Yeah. He's an intriguing dude that I will have 0 of because I'm going to be going running back in those rounds.
Good point.
I mean, it's just, hey, let's talk about these wide receivers we're never fucking drafting. Because we're going to be pushing the button on running back, and rookie drafts. I can't believe it's so flipped. I mean, this is the craziest thing where the cadence would typically be running back, receiver, whereas this year it might go receiver, running back. And we did move down Treylon Burks. I mean, Treylon Burks is the guy I want in the first round. This is all good news because it makes him more affordable, makes him more likely to slip to, say, the 5th pick or the 6th pick. It depends on where Drake London gets drafted. I don't envision a world, unless Burks falls out of the first round, where London can possibly overtake Burks. But, London's not done yet. London could absolutely move up if he has a great pro day, and especially if he gets drafted top 10. So there's a lot of variance in the Drake London ranking right now that just isn't there with Chris Olave. Like, we know what Chris Olave is, and he's never going to be Drake London. Like, it's not going to be there in the rankings. He's hitting that hard ceiling. George Pickens, if he goes to the right team in the first round, I mean, he could move way up. But it's just hard for me to get my head around anyone overtaking Burks because he's such a phenomenal prospect. And slightly missing expectations at the combine should be viewed by us as a good thing because we know at his size, with his production profile, the athleticism is not that important. The athleticism really matters if you come from a small school or you're tiny, right? You need to blaze or you need to show overall versatile athleticism like Christian Watson. If you're tiny, you need to blaze, right? So thankfully, guys like Calvin Austin did just that. He did what he had to do. Treylon Burks didn't have nearly as much at stake. Very few players had less at stake at the combine than Treylon Burks. That's why he lost all of 2 lifetime value rating points. This is like 1.5% of his lifetime value after missing expectations at the combine. It just wasn't a big deal, and he's still the wide receiver 1, and I don't care to hear arguments to the contrary. I'm here to hear a lot of arguments. I'm going to bring on a lot of people on this show, as we do every year, to talk about prospects. This is the one thing I'm probably not care to hearing. I wouldn't care to hear. Like, your argument against Treylon Burks, not interested.
I think he's still in that A.J. Brown, that Andre Johnson sphere as far as athleticism. And obviously, Andre runs 4.40, Brown runs 4.49, Burks is 4.55. But again, game speed is a little bit different for Burks. I think he had the fastest game speed all season. And I think it's just a little bit different. I don't think you can write it off. Just as you said, there's going to be no argument. I don't think you can take anybody off of him. There's been actually conversation between Olave and Wilson. I was talking to Alex about this all week, and this was a thing that I take into account because Alex has been into these combines for 10, 12 years consecutively, obviously without last year. And one of the big things he looks at is the gauntlet drill. The gauntlet drill, obviously, where they run sideline to sideline, and it's ball left, ball right, ball left, ball right, and it's staying on track. And Olave, he said, ran a Odell Beckham-esque gauntlet drill. And then you watch Wilson run it, and Wilson's, going back and forth like a snake on this, and that's not what you want. You want to see straight down the line, some Jefferson Odell-esque stuff, and that's what Olave brought to the table. Olave also came in where he was expected. Wilson came in a little bit light. He did run faster than expected, but again, this is a guy, Alex, who Garrett Wilson grew up in Alex's neighborhood, and that's a guy that he looked at a lot, and now he's considering Olave in that same tier, if not over Wilson. We had a lot of those conversations. And then before that, Pickens actually is still hurt, some people say. He ran a 4.47. When he was interviewed, I asked him, I said, what are you going to run? He said, I want to run the 4.3s, but 4.4 probably. I want to show people that I'm still fast. And if he's not 100%, if he's, say, 85, 95%, and he runs a 4.47, and then he runs again in his combine, what are we going to see there? Because this guy had one of the toughest mindsets to me. When I asked him who he models the game after, it was Devontae Adams, and I'm a bigger Devontae Adams. He's as tall as him, but he's not as thick as him. He's 195 pounds. Devontae's like 215. But that mindset, I just hope he does stay healthy, gets healthy. He's a year removed from an ACL injury, and he's a downfield guy that I really think you can depend on, because I think he has the most talent from the wide receiver position in this entire draft.
Whoa, really?
Yes.
Whoa. So
yeah.
Should we be considering moving Wilson down?
I think we need to wait through this pro day process, because I think Olave and Wilson should be side by side. But again, I also think Pickens should be in that same conversation. I just wish that it wouldn't have came out that he wasn't 100%. I wish hindsight's hindsight. I wish he would have been 100%, maybe around like a 4.43. Then I would have been pushing all the chips in and said, hey, we got to move Pickens up to 2-3 area. And the London thing is really, really what hurts the rankings, because again, he's 20 and a half. He has the great breakout. He looks phenomenal on film. He's going to play from the slot. He's got that Michael Thomas-esque type play style. But what's he going to run? Is he going to be a 4.65 guy, or is he going to be a 4.45 guy? Is he going to be healthy? We've seen this foot situation. This drives me nuts every year. We've seen it. Terrace Marshall, Brian Edwards, T. Higgins, these guys that go early round 2, and it's going to be a really tough situation.
Brian Edwards, another guy that didn't run at the combine.
Yeah, with London just like locking us in here.
The correlation's real, man. We just don't have a big sample.
Yeah,
it's a small sample correlation. Those are very dangerous. What we do know with a larger sample is that if you declare early, like Garrett Wilson, and you have incredible teammate score, level of competition, all these things, Garrett Wilson is probably great.
Yeah,
I think so. I worry when a player from when they were in high school, sometimes you can get too close. My worry with Alex is that with Garrett Wilson, he's just too close to see the truth. That for whatever it is, like he might be overcompensating, thinking, I don't want to be too bullish on this guy because I've loved him for so many years. And then what ends up happening is you overcompensate and you discount him too much. And you're like, I never should have discounted him. I should have trusted the guy I knew all along. And it's like, listen, man, this is what happens when you get too close.
It's kind of like the Thibodeaux thing with the media is Thibodeau's being the number one guy for years. And then you're like, there's just too much here to pick at. And you pull away a little bit. But I think it only I've got to talk about that stuff like for the next 2 months. I really don't.
You glitched there. Say that again.
I said I think that just stamps it with Treylon Burks that he's the wide receiver 1. I think Breece Hall's the RB1. I think you can stamp them both, and I don't really think you have to talk about them for the next 2 months. Like I think it's just locked in. I don't know. I don't think Treylon Burks, after conversations, he's not going to fall past 24. That's a guarantee. If Hall, worst case scenario, Kenneth Walker goes in front of Hall, but I still. I don't think there's a lot there that can change between these two guys being the top guy at these positions.
We're going to talk about Superflex with the quarterbacks at some point, at many points. But let's just quickly, Malik Willis helped himself, right? He had the arm strength, but he also looked like he was wired the right way. You saw him practicing in the hallway, right? You saw him giving change to a person that needed money outside the facility. You saw him in the restroom, and he seemed polite. I don't know. What are we talking about here? But I'm just saying, like, there were no concerns that this guy thinks he's the best and doesn't need to work hard. That's not a concern, right? So that's important, right? And then, whether it's Ryan Leaf or whether it's Jamarcus Russell, like knowing that this guy's wired the right way is important. And Kenny Pickett comes down a little bit because the hand size was just super. Let's just talk about the Kenny Pickett hand size because you actually mentioned it and then you made SportsCenter. Congratulations. That's why we sent you.
Yeah.
You're a member of the media.
Appreciate that.
And now you're on SportsCenter.
It was pretty awesome to get back to the Airbnb and turn the TV on and then have him answering my question. Obviously, my voice wasn't on there. It was just him. But I mean, it is what it is.
People saw the episode, Cody. You didn't have to say that you weren't. You didn't have to say that your voice wasn't on that. You didn't have to say they cut your voice out. Yes, you cut the. Just let me say it and make the audience go watch the clip to know whether or not your voice was mentioned. Now everybody knows that you actually weren't on SportsCenter. But the way I framed it, it was like you were on SportsCenter.
Yes.
Dude, this is the magic of streaming on YouTube and on podcasts. This is this is magic, man. This is sports entertainment. We're not always saying things that would reveal that we're not actually on SportsCenter.
Hey,
but you were on SportsCenter, kinda. He answered your question on SportsCenter at the very least, and you were the one that had the courage to fucking ask him about the hand size. If you didn't, my question for you is, had you not asked him about the hand size, would anyone in the gaggle, would any of them have, in the scrum, would any of them have asked?
It's very interesting that you asked that because Kenny Pickett was in medicals and interviews before he came out to do his press, and he was slated to go, I believe at the time was 10:15. He was supposed to be on the podium, and Kenny Pickett did not step on the podium until 11:45. He was the last quarterback in the room, the last quarterback there, and I was standing amongst, I believe, about 6 or 7 Pittsburgh Steelers media, and they were all pissed because they were like hired to go to the combine to interview Kenny Pickett. All guys from the Pittsburgh area, whether it's Pittsburgh Panthers or Pittsburgh Steelers, they're all there to talk to Kenny. And so they're standing there waiting in line, and they were like, he's going to come out here, we're going to mug him, and like joking around shit. And then he's like, who's going to be the first one to ask him about his hands? Ha, ha, ha. And they were like, as if they weren't going to say something. And then there was like 5 questions go by, and I was like, dude, no one's really going to say anything. Like that would have been the first question. I would have been like, hey, you've been an hour and a half in medicals, what's your hands like? Something, right? Be a smart ass. And I said, no, there's a lot of questions and concerns with their hand size. Just said, do you read much into it at all? He said, no, I mean, it is what it is. I think the media runs with it. I'd say more than the NFL teams do. There wasn't much talk about it in the formal or informal interviews. There wasn't much talk about it.
Much.
There was some, though.
Much.
There was some, though.
Much.
Interviews that I've had so far this week. So it is what it is.
Not much.
There wasn't much.
Let me ask you a question.
So there was some.
Just using your brain, okay? And I'll put that to the audience, everybody, right? Use your brain, right? Using your brain, turn your brain on, okay? I'm asking everyone right now, I don't care where you are, you're in your car, you're running, you're working. Let me have your attention. Turn your brain on. Turn it on right now, okay? It's on, right? We're flicking it on. The brain is on. Do you think it matters how much surface area you can cover with your hand when you're launching it forward and you're spinning it? Do you think the surface area that you can cover matters at the release point, at launch? Yeah. Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. And then as it turns out, when you actually run the study, as Jonathan Bales has done and others have done, there is a correlation between NFL production and hand size, and it goes up as hand size gets bigger. The problem is we don't know players with 8.5-inch hands. It's like they're a unicorn, like Michael Vick. Like that's it. Then you have people comparing him to Michael Vick. Well, Michael Vick was fine. Yeah, Michael Vick played in a dome, and he hurt teams more with his legs and his arm half the time. Is that going to be Kenny Pickett? No. Could he be playing in conditions? Yes. And as it turns out, that the production waned even more for the small-handed quarterbacks in the rain and snow and cold conditions. It just makes logical sense. I love it when the numbers line up with intuition. And so to go against that, to go against the numbers and argue against intuition, you have to bring a lot of data. And guess what we're bringing? No one's bringing anything. I'm seeing nothing except Michael Vick. Michael Vick and maybe Joe Burrow. And it's like, okay, Joe Burrow, cool. Ryan Tannehill, cool. Well, they had 9-inch hands. That's a little bit different, right? That's a full half-inch. And Joe Burrow is wired in a certain way that I don't believe any other quarterback is. So probably Joe Burrow is not a great comp. Michael Vick is not a great comp. The other guy, though, is a great comp. And he's the comp. I can't imagine us comping him to anyone else. And that's Ryan Tannehill. That's why we have him ranked where we do. We think he's good. We think he's like Ryan Tannehill. But the idea that hand size doesn't matter is foolish.
And to go with the passing, you're talking about passing. Let's talk about NFL players with fumbles in the NFL. Quarterbacks with fumbles. Derek Carr, number 2 in the NFL in fumbles last year with 14, 12th percentile, 9 and 1/8 inch hands, some of the smallest of the NFL. When you go back to Kenny Pickett in college, he lost 38 fumbles over 4 seasons. Or he had 38 fumbles. He lost 26 of them. Fumbles
Do you
are
think
another
at
massive
any
thing.
point in Kenny Pickett's career, he will be benched over turnovers?
I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility, but I don't think if he's a first-round pick, I don't think he will be.
Yes, he will be. Yes, he will be. Kenny Pickett is going to be benched. Most quarterbacks are benched at some point in their career for something. And I can guarantee at some point in his career, Kenny Pickett's going to be benched. Now, he could come back and bounce back from it. Ryan Tannehill was benched in Miami. It happened. Yeah. It's a thing that happened. So,
but I think if you're good enough, like if you look at the list, like I think if you're good enough, you're not going to. And that's the thing is like Tannehill had 10 fumbles. He was ranked 8th. You look at the top end of this, like Dak Prescott 15, Derek Carr 14, Kyler. If you're good enough, you're not going to get benched. That's kind of my point more so than anything is like if you're on that level.
I don't know how good he is.
Taysom Hill 11 fumbles last year. He's not a starting quarterback. Carson Wentz 10 in 2020. Obviously, we saw him get benched. Some other guys on here. Drew Lock 8 fumbles. He was 11th last year. So Nick Mullins, like guys like that. Like if you're at that level of talent, you're going to get benched. But I don't think if you're at that Dak, if you're at that Burrow, if you're at that talent level, which is if people want to draw that line to Joe Burrow and be like, oh, Burrow's got 9-inch hands. Okay, well, if he has the talent of Joe Burrow, he ain't going to get benched for fumbling once or twice a game. I don't see that happening. But again, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility if he's at Drew Lock's level of talent.
It's just wild. It's wild that the quarterback class is so underwhelming that you would ever draft a wide receiver over the QB2 in the class. Let me say it again. This is very important. In most classes, you would never consider drafting a wide receiver over the QB2. And it was a real conversation. It was a real conversation in Superflex drafts last year. Jamar Chase or Fields/Lance. That was a real conversation. Most of the drafts I was in, most of the rookie drafts went either Lance or Fields, not Chase. Chase was the 102 in precious few Superflex drafts because that's generally the right move. But this year, because there is no Lance, there is no Fields in this class, well, Treylon Burks needs to go over any other quarterback with the exception of Malik Willis. And this is why I think I'm going to have more Treylon Burks on my Dynasty teams than I've ever had a top-flight wide receiver, because typically I just let the top-flight wide receiver go. Not last year. I was still pushing the button on Jamar Chase. But in almost every other draft class, there isn't a best wide receiver of the last decade like Jamar Chase available. So you just pass and you go quarterback, and most of these quarterbacks will not disappoint you. Even if you draft a Sam Darnold, he can have a renaissance in a couple of years, go to Carolina, and then you can flip him. Right? That's why I had some Sam Darnold for that exact reason, and ended up flipping him when he went to Carolina, when there was all this hype about them fixing him in Carolina. I said, get him out of here, finally. Right? So they retain value better than these wide receivers that when they flame out hard, and it's over. It's so over. There's no redemption story. With these quarterbacks, there's typically a redemption story, but I'm not that interested this year in Pickett, Howell. Give me Treylon Burks. Give me Treylon Burks. I want an alpha wide receiver that looks like Des Bryant and Allen Robinson had a baby.
Exactly, and I'd agree 100% on that. The problem is, I think with the tier of quarterback that you're looking at is, like you said, Kenny Pickett is in that Ryan Tannehill tier. It's not tier 1. I think Desmond Ridder is some combination of Jimmy Garoppolo from a passing standpoint and the rushing upside of a Jalen Hurts. Jimmy Garoppolo's arm talent we're talking about, Ryan Tannehill's arm talent. And then with Howell and Corral, there's some combination of like the Mayfield and the Carr talent. And those are weird mixtures of guys that aren't tier 1. We're talking about a bunch of guys that will not and are not going to be tier 1. And Malik Willis, I feel like, is going to be that guy that he's the only one that truly has that top end talent upside.
And in a couple of years, we could look up and Desmond Ridder is the second best or best quarterback from this class because he has truly special athleticism. There's so few special traits in this quarterback class that if you are instead just focused on Ridder and his special athleticism, I wouldn't fault you at all. I get it. I would totally get it. And if Ridder is available at the beginning of the second round, I want that guy. That's just on principle, it's the right move. If an athletic quarterback who was productive, right? You have to be productive and athletic. If you're both and you fall to the second round for whatever reason, that's the Jalen Hurts corollary. You just draft that guy in the second round of your Superflex rookie draft every time on principle. You don't worry about it. And now you look up and Hurts is more valuable than all the other guys in the second round, including a guy like T. Higgins, right? Right now in Superflex, you'd rather have Hurts than Higgins, and they were second-round picks in Superflex a couple of years ago.
It's crazy to see that this situation where we have. I was thinking about this one the other day with the Nevada team and the Cincinnati team. Is you have Carson Strong, you have Romeo Dubs, and you have Cole Turner.
Oh, God.
3 guys on the same team that have really flamed this whole process. And then you have Cincinnati where Desmond Ridder. He's now showing that he truly has that Konami upside in the NFL. You have Alec Pierce, runs a 4.4. He's got upside in the NFL. And you have Jerome Ford, who we've talked about many times before. This team is dominating. This team was actually in the Final Four of the college football playoff, and this other Nevada team was kind of lesser thought of, lesser known, and they actually just flamed the whole process, even though they all were at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah. Ridder is running for 500 yards a season. He's not throwing 10 picks ever in a season. He's got that nice 75th percentile college QBR, and he's blazing. So, no, he's not overrated. I'm seeing that he's overrated in the chat. He has big hands. He has big everything. He's everything except for the pure arm talent. The pure arm talent, I think, is still in that Garoppolo stance, which is not terrible by any means. It's just like that's just where he's at right now. And that doesn't mean he's working with Jordan Palmer. So it doesn't mean that that's his cap. Jalen Hurts corollary.
Jordan Palmer.
Jalen Hurts does not have great arm talent.
Yeah, exactly.
What's the problem here? I'm not saying he's Jalen Hurts. Of course not. But it's just based on principle. Like, this is why comps are so important. Right? Because that's how you can project how players are going to be. If this guy is fitting into all of these data points, similar to how a Jalen Hurts fit into these data points, then you have to consider it. You have to think it through and be like, well, okay, I could pass on Desmond Ridder here. I do like the receiver here. I do like Jahan Dotson here. But what is Jahan Dotson's upside really versus what's Jalen Hurts or Desmond Ridder's upside really, right? You're having this conversation with yourself, and you're like, well, geez, I really like Jalen Reagor or Brandon Ayuk in the second round. These guys are exciting. They're electric. Love them with the ball in their hands. All these things, right? And you think, get so excited about receivers in the second round because that's typically where you want to get receivers. But in Superflex drafts, you cannot let these shiny receiver objects distract you if there is a quarterback that is available in the second round who has top 12 upside in Superflex leagues. And Desmond Ridder has that because he ran the 4.52. That's it, and that is all. That is what I'm saying. Nothing else matters. Arm talent, arm schmalin. I don't care. All I know is that there's a regret factor. If I look back and I drafted Brandon Ayuk over Jalen Hurts 2 years later, I'm regretting it. I fucked up. Big time. Right? There's much less room to regret if you just take the quarterback knowing that they are the most valuable assets in Superflex. Just on that principle alone, go Ridder if he's available and ignore whatever wide receivers might have slipped. It's a very important principle of drafting in Superflex leagues that needs to be talked about more.
There's a player that I really like. I'm kind of looking up some guys that kind of compare and try to find a guy next to Desmond Ridder while we're talking about Jalen Hurts. And the guy that I'm like finding is like the Donovan McNabb, four-year starter at Syracuse, over 1,500 rushing yards. You can't teach 2,000 rushing yards from a quarterback from Desmond Ridder. The passing efficiency, 20 touchdowns, 5 interceptions as a true freshman for Desmond Ridder, 16 touchdowns, 6 for McNabb as a true freshman. Neither of these guys had over 10 interceptions in a season and really never pressed over 30 touchdown passes. Efficient, great college quarterbacks, and truthfully just overlooked. I think it's like you said, though, like you can't really say Jalen Hurts because of where he's at right now, but I think coming out of college, if you would have said, if you could backtrack where Jalen Hurts was coming out at the same exact time with what we knew at the time versus what Ridder has right now coming out right now, I think they'd be a lot closer than a lot of people want to think about.
Even looking at the Senior Bowl, the comments from the Senior Bowl were very similar about Hurts and Ridder.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, I'm not saying they're the same guy. I'm not saying they're even going to be close. What I'm saying is if you have that opportunity, you push the button and you don't think about any other thing. You just don't think about it. You just, right? This is what I'm doing. So it's just, in rookie drafts, it's more about avoiding mistakes than it is hitting home runs. Just trying to not make mistakes. And not making a mistake, avoiding mistakes is also about maximizing upside. I'm not saying this isn't about, you can't maximize. The Podfather, I thought upside was everything in fantasy football. Now you're telling me not to care about upside and just try to avoid mistakes? No. I'm saying it's a mistake if you avoid the upside of a quarterback with a 97th percentile speed score. I'm saying that's a mistake. That's
100%.
We're not properly assessing the upside of that guy in that format. That's the show. Thank you, Cody. Thank you, stream. Let's take a question from the stream. I'm still getting used to this process of taking a stream question. But
I see
Mike
see
Anderson
in
is
there.
in the stream. He's just pounding the stream. He thinks that Ridder's overrated because he had a bad game against Alabama. And I would remind you that Jalen Hurts got benched. So I
see
still wouldn't hold one particular game against a guy.
Yeah.
Especially the Alabama defense.
I was going to say, the Alabama defense is something that you can't single out a game. You can't single out a season on a guy because he did poor against Alabama when everybody does poor against Alabama. Like Stetson Bennett did poor against Alabama and still won the national championship. It's just a whole different if you did that, you'd have no good quarterbacks because everybody struggles against these guys.
So the question in the chat, Cody, is would you rather have Pickens or would you rather go with Ridder?
Well, is Superflex, I'm assuming?
Yeah.
I would really need to know where my team sits and what I need, but I would. That's tough. I really want to say Pickens.
I know. But I don't think Pickens is going second round. I think Pickens is going to be a late first rounder.
Yeah. If
when
Pickens
I talk
is a late
about the
first
fact that I'm
rounder,
going to draft
I
a
think so.
wide receiver in the first round this year more than I would any other year, Pickens is in that conversation. Pickens is one of those guys I'm targeting. I don't think he's going to make it to the second round, even in Superflex. I don't think
There'd have
so.
to be some bad medicals. Medicals would have to come back bad for Pickens to fall to round 2.
And we are moving up Ridder.
Ridder. I was just going to say we got to move Ridder up a little bit.
Yeah, Ridder somehow didn't get moved up enough. So, listen, we work overtime getting all these. It's you got to remember with Player Profiler, we're working overtime every day of the NFL season to pump out as much content as we do during the season. And then the problem is we don't really have an off season because then the combine happens, then free agency happens, and the draft happens, and then fantasy drafts are happening. And so, I salute all members of the underworld that are producing all this content, creating all these player pages, working on the rankings. We just launched the best ball rankings. Those are on the site right now. Huge effort from Larky and company getting those up. We just launched the bios on player pages. So that was just an enormous effort where we're putting up like 500 words on every player. So you can learn about where they came from, where they went to high school, their whole journey through the NFL. So yeah, there may be some lag in some of these players getting adjusted, and Ridder is one of them.
I do want to say shout out to Johannes from the Underworld Army in the chat. The only person I see in the chat with a green name, and to get that green name, you got to join the Underworld Army right below here. Just click that join button. But yeah, shout out.
Yeah, incredible stuff. We have the Underworld Army. It just launched. we're going to be doing special giveaways and privileges for the Underworld Army. We're just rolling this out slowly. You're going to want to get out ahead of it so you can get a special icon, a special avatar. It may be, I think, higher levels of the Army. Yep. You can get some form of a werewolf avatar with maybe laser beams coming out of it. It's very cool. Just trust me, it's a good idea to join the Army. So thank you, everyone. This was great. Thank you to Cody going to the Combine right after he went to the Senior Bowl. Dude's a horse, and a lot more to come.